Now, Steve, I feel like what's really going on here is this government is founded by guys who like to on girls, and the other guys, they like to in the, and that's the whole central conflict. These guys all just want to, and they're, and you know how that goes. If you want to, it's a and a Blumpkin. And Steve, what's Ed Asner's character's name? It doesn't matter.
Okay.
He's selling prophylactics out of the trunk of his car, and that's, you know, that Lincoln, that's like 100 cubic feet. So he's got a side hustle. So Ed Asner's wife is like, "Hey, remember when we used to and you'd me in the?" And he's like, well, we can't do that anymore because of bylaw 136, section 2, paragraph 1, but I can still your until it comes out of the
Rees Company.
By the way, like, comment, and subscribe. It helps the algorithm.
The Rees Company.
All right, crack open a tepid Genesee. Watch the pictures as they travel through your neighbor's Wi-Fi. It's the Rees Company. I'm Steve Rees, the bull of American broadcasting, alongside the great Chris Morganti. How are you, Chris?
I'm good.
Now, if you're joining us this week specifically to see me make good, keep my promise, and enact what I've agreed to accomplish as a result of our Super Bowl wager, well, you're not in luck this week.
Nope. The Rees Company, once again, snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. We're still waiting on a puppet, basically.
Yes, and we're waiting for this to be delivered. And speaking of awaiting a delivery, why don't we go into our movie of the week, Chris?
Oh, nice segue.
Okay. Yeah, this week we're going to discuss The Last Child.
Yep.
It aired on October 5th, 1971 on A, Beetle C. Produced by Aaron Spelling, whose work we've seen here prior. Most notably, what comes to mind is a movie called The City, starring Mark Hamill, Don Johnson, and Robert Forster.
Oh, right. Yeah.
One of my favorite movies that we've watched on this program. So I guess let's just dive right into this.
You know, think about that, 1971. That's one of the earliest ones we've done.
Yeah.
And you can tell there's still some people in this movie that they talk like this. You know, that old Hollywood accent.
The transcontinental or transatlantic accent.
Transatlantic, I think, is what it's called. Yeah. Notably, the who was it? I don't even know. I don't know. We'll see if we get to him. But
yeah, hopefully we do.
Yeah.
So as this film begins, a title tells us that this is set in the not too distant future, and we soon learn that in this future, due to overpopulation, America has instituted a one-child per couple policy. Now, Chris, to be honest, I could get behind something like that.
Yeah. I mean, China had this policy for 35 years. So there's a real-world example of this. It's not that outlandish.
There is, and it's amazing how many people I mentioned that to, that I would support this kind of policy, and who agree with me.
Yeah, I mean,
but Chris, here's where I lose them. I lose them with one word.
Okay.
Retroactive.
Oh. All right.
Flip a coin, Sophie. So we meet a young couple, Alan and Karen Miller. Alan, he's played by Michael Cole, and he earned a Golden Globe nomination for this performance. He's best known as Pete from the Mod Squad.
All right, now I got to stop you here, Steve, because I see we're jumping in 7 minutes into this, right?
Yes.
There's a whole intro sequence where I guess they're in like a subway, the New York subway.
Yeah, a subway platform.
And it's very crowded, as you would expect. But there's a pregnant woman there, and the cops take her away. And somehow this guy who you just mentioned from the Mod Squad that we're about to meet, he gets wrapped up in this and taken to the police station for, unruly behavior, I guess. But what I didn't get was, how did the cops then get on his trail?
Well, you have to turn over an ID card has replaced the driver's license.
Right. And they ran his ID card. It came up clean, and they let him go.
It didn't exactly come up clean because the number on the card indicates that he's from upstate, whereas he's living in New York City. He has not yet updated his status, so
That's what
population control becomes suspicious of him. We're getting way ahead of things.
Yeah,
here.
that's what it was. Okay.
Okay. All right. So, yeah, Michael Cole, Mod Squad. Let's see him and his wife, Karen. Alan and Karen Miller.
Karen?
Hi.
Karen, I've told you. I don't like you going out alone.
But I wore my raincoat. Nobody could tell I was pregnant.
Honey, that's not the point. It's our identification numbers. They're traceable.
Alan, I'm sorry.
Karen, you don't know them. You don't know what they're like. They're everywhere. They're every place. And if they find us, you know what they will do.
Yeah. And we'll get to what they'll do. So,
By the way, you'll notice from that refrigerator that was in that scene, they make zero attempt to make anything look futuristic. It looks, I mean, now this is like 50 years ago now. Everything looks really freaking old.
Yeah.
They made, like, you ever see like Demolition Man with Sylvester Stallone?
sure.
Like they came up with all like these new, like, what would the future be like?
Yeah, like
you
the
know?
Jetsons.
Yeah. They're like, most, anyway.
Well, they did say the not too distant future.
Right. But in order for this outlandish situation is not going to develop in the space of like 3 or 4 years.
But I think that's the purpose of this film, is to act as though if certain things do not occur, this could be the fate of America.
So you think that was a deliberate decision that they made rather than we don't have the budget to make this 1970 LeBaron look like anything other than a 1970 LeBaron.
Well, Chris, the reason why there are 1970, we're going to get into why there are
All right.
1970 LeBarons here, too.
I know.
Okay. So he just said, oh, you know what they can do or whatever. And we'll get into that in a bit. That night, Alan and Karen have dinner with Karen's brother, Howard, and his wife. Howard is not best pleased with his sister's decisions, having a baby.
I simply want to tell you that you're making a big mistake.
Which is not your problem.
It most certainly is my problem. I happen to hold an executive position with the government. If I get involved with anything illegal, I can be crucified. And I can assure you that there are Judases around, poised, watching, waiting to stick me right between the shoulder blades.
Howard, please.
If I had the power to prevent this second conception, and I mean this, Karen, I would have stopped it cold.
Well, seeing we've been spared your presence in our bed, you don't have that power. So why don't you just relax? Breathe through your nose, take it easy. Or if you're really worried, why don't you turn us over to population control? It just takes a phone call.
I've considered that, Alan. The thought has crossed my mind. But if I did, it would be for your own good.
Yeah.
Now, when he said he would be crucified, do we know if he meant literally?
I don't think literally.
Okay. All right.
Now, he's upset because this makes him look bad, and he's in a position of power. He has this vague relationship with the government. He's in an executive position.
Okay.
And that's never really specified what that position is.
No.
But throughout this movie, he is only concerned, it seems, with maintaining his position with the government.
Yeah.
And now that his sister is being watched by population control for having an out-of-town ID card, or her husband having an out-of-town ID card, it looks bad for him.
Well, did we mention that they already had a child that died after 15 days?
Yeah, and you heard Howard say, we haven't, but you did hear Howard use the phrase second conception.
Yeah. So they had a kid, it died. The law is if a kid dies within the first 10 days, you're allowed to have another child. Because it lived 15 days, they are prevented from doing that.
That's your one.
Yep, that was their one shot.
So they're breaking the law by having another child. They hope to blend in into the larger city, avoid the mandatory sterilizations subsequent to the birth of a viable child,
Mandatory hysterectomies.
and have this new child without the government taking notice. Now, couldn't part of this plan, Chris, theoretically, limiting children to one per couple? Couldn't it include a cap and trade option?
Yeah, I was just thinking that.
But they never really brought that up.
Yeah. But that's not, they don't seem all that well off. I mean, they lived in a small apartment. So I don't know that that would be an option for them. Like that's only going to benefit rich people, you know?
Yes, but it's also a way to get more people behind it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That way, couples who couldn't have kids or voluntarily agreed not to, they could sell their credit to have a child, to other couples who wish to have multiple children. And if the goal is to effectively have the population, it could still be done with that as an option. But we should probably start talking about this, Chris, because I don't want to give anybody ideas.
All right. Well, you know, the thing is, and then who do you think is going to see this? Joe Biden?
I assume everybody's watching, Chris. Well, back to Howard. He is right about one thing. It's just a matter of time before population control catches up to Karen and Alan.
Yes, they're very zealous.
Yeah. And locally, that department is run by a familiar face on this program.
Now, can we pause it?
Mrs. Ellen Miller.
What was, go back like 3 seconds so we can see that sign there. That's, how much, what does that say? 9 cents? 9 cents. So again, Steve, I don't mean to belabor the point, but do you think in a world where population is out of control and they're having to enforce these draconian policies in order to make sure that people don't starve to death, do you think that the vegetables are still going for 9 cents?
Chris,
or they didn't have the budget to make up new signs to put in the supermarket?
Well, that's one way of looking at it, but the way I see it, Chris, and I'm married to this theory that the producers, the writers, the director, they all wanted you to believe that this could happen within a week.
Okay.
This is the not too distant future.
That just doesn't make sense, though. But okay.
There's an urgency that if we don't do certain things that may arise soon in government, that this is how things could end up.
Okay.
And we'll get there in a bit. Let's see.
This does not in any way seem like an Aaron Spelling production to me.
No, it doesn't. This does not seem like the guy behind Melrose Place.
No. But anyway.
Mrs. Ellen Miller.
Yes?
Mrs. Miller, my name is Barstow. I'm an enforcement officer for the Department of Population Control. I wonder if you would come with us.
I don't understand.
We have a detainment order. This requires you to accompany us to department headquarters.
Please, may I call my husband?
You'll be permitted to contact
Please,
him
let
later.
me call
I'm
him.
sorry, Mrs. Miller. You're under arrest.
Yeah. So Ed Asner runs Karen in, and she's detained at a medical facility. Alan joins her there, and a doctor meets with the couple to discuss with them what happens next.
Office, and no one would listen, so we just decided it was hopeless and left town and moved down here.
I understand. It's not a very palatable law, is it? Perhaps if we'd practiced Planned Parenthood in the past, it wouldn't be necessary. But now it's the law. 1 child per family, no more, and no exceptions.
But our baby's dead.
Perhaps if we'd practiced Planned Parenthood in the past, it wouldn't be necessary. Mm-hmm. It's important to note that this aired 2 years before Roe versus Wade. Mm-hmm. And the legality of its subject matter was hotly debated and very much up in the air. And this film is essentially about what might happen if things were to swing in the opposite historical extreme.
Yeah, we mentioned before the one-child policy in China. It was eventually repealed because China had, as it became more modernized, like much of Europe and the United States, these countries don't have overcrowding population problems because people just stopped having kids. You know, and China went kind of the same way, so they didn't need that policy anymore. But when I was in college, I studied the works of Thomas Malthus. I don't know if you've ever heard of him, but he was the first person to do like theorizing of when you have surplus agricultural production, it increases the population, and coming up with theories as to what would happen, you know, and he just assumed that eventually it would just get out of control. And I think that's what everyone assumed up until, I guess, 1971. that was the assumption of what would happen, but that's not really the way things played out. Now it's more, I think we're looking at things more like climate change is going to be, like if there's not enough arable land and fresh water and stuff, rather than how much food we can make, if that makes sense. But I thought this was pretty thought-provoking, this movie. And normally my first instinct was to just mock it, like everything else. But then when I start getting into it, I thought this was interesting, and I don't know. I hope anyone finds this interesting, but I don't know.
Well, let's rejoin this conversation.
We're at a very difficult period in the pregnancy, Mrs. Miller. I suppose we could bring on a miscarriage, but at this point, that always carries a danger to the mother. On the other hand, we could wait until the child is actually delivered and then immediately dispose of it.
Dispose of it? You're not talking about a piece of garbage.
I'm sorry. I apologize. I didn't mean it to sound that way. Now, look, both of you, I promise you there is no pain for the baby. There's no life to speak of, really. It's just a fleeting moment. It's all done with kindness, quickly, efficiently.
You're murdering a baby, but you're doing it kindly.
We don't think of it as murdering. We simply can't look at it that way.
You are taking a human life, and that is murder. Every human being has the right to live.
No, Mr. Miller, you're wrong.
After all, some people pronounce it pumpkin.
I feel like it was that doctor's first day on the job. Shouldn't he be used to having these conversations? I mean, he's the doctor the government designates to deal with people that are doing this.
Yes, but at the end of the conversation, he indicates unease with his position.
Yeah.
And in fact, Alan asks him, how do you sleep at night? And he says, well, not always very well, something to that effect. Yeah. So it does weigh on his conscience what he's been, conscripted to do.
Yeah, I guess they were trying to make a point there. I feel like it would have been more realistic to have like a Dr. Mengele type in that position,
Right.
But they didn't go that way.
Right.
So is this the next scene we're going to see? What's up there?
Yeah,
This is the guy that speaks in the old-timey accent.
Okay, well, he's the editor of a newspaper.
Okay.
Now, Alan is free to go, but Karen remains in custody, as authorities await the birth of their child. But after Alan begs Howard to intervene, remember, he's an unspecified government official, an executive position, perhaps president? I don't really understand. It
sounds like he's a bureaucrat.
Identified. All right.
Yeah.
Well, Karen is released, though she's still expected to give up her baby once her baby is born. Well, Alan has a friend who's a writer for the local newspaper, who gets him a meeting with the editor to discuss the possibility of the paper taking up his and Karen's cause in the form of an editorial. Let's hear what the editor has to say.
Go out on a limb. Mr. Miller, I'm 64 years old. If I were to come down with hepatitis today, I'd get a couple of days off, a couple of dirty looks, and some pills to see me through. But next month, I'll be 65. You know what I'll get then? A letter from the government telling me I'm only allowed medication to ease the pain. That's all. They just let me die. There are no exceptions. Not for me, not for you, not for your baby.
At least we could try.
Wow, that's a bombshell. Now we learn that there's two parts to this depopulation policy that they have.
It's not just at the beginning of life.
Yeah.
They're concerned.
Yeah.
With overpopulation. They try to get rid of people early. Once they reach 65, they no longer receive medical treatment for any illnesses they may incur. But are these people also not allowed to vote? It seems unlikely that there wouldn't be enough people in society of that age who could kind of affect change in government at the polls. Hey, here's an idea. Why not elect a Congress made up entirely of 64-year-olds? Well, I'll bet you things would change pretty quickly, Chris.
Yeah.
My guess is it would happen within a year.
Well, you're assuming that the government is the same. And we do know that there is a congressman or a senator. I don't know what he was.
We're going to meet an ex-senator pretty soon, yes.
Right. Ex-senator. The Senate may no longer exist. It may be a figurehead. We don't know who's really making these policies. People may not be allowed to vote. We don't know. The movie doesn't tell us.
Well, the good news is the editor does relent, and the paper runs an editorial touting Karen's cause, which does not make Howard's afternoon.
This is the thanks I get. This is the appreciation, the gratitude.
Come off it, Howard. You're still standing on your feet, aren't you? You're breathing. You're surviving. That's your big thing, isn't it, survival?
That's a crime, huh? That's a sin. That's an unforgivable thing that a man wants to stay alive. Listen, I kept your wife from 10 stinking rotten weeks in a detention cell.
Your sister.
My sister was never pregnant. Your wife, Alan. You're responsible for her. In 1 hour, I have to report to the district commissioner. This could be the end for me now.
All right, just relax. Settle down. What's done is done. Maybe now that it's out in the open, they'll be forced to make an exception.
Oh, that's right. Out of a fairy tale. That's what that is. It's euphoria time. It's the happy idiot hour. They're not going to make any exception because you fixed it. So they can't. Because it's out in the open, now you get nailed.
Howard, what are you going to tell them?
Whatever I have to protect myself.
Yeah. So, afraid for their baby's safety, they take the child on a prenatal Logan's Run. They try to book a train to Portland, Maine. They're thwarted at the ticket counter. See, cars have also been banned in this society. Existing ones are grandfathered, but no new ones are being produced. As a result, for most travel, you need a ticket for public transport and a check of ID. Now, Alan's ID card is flagged. He's a flight risk.
Yeah.
And as such, he's barred from travel by population control. So at the train station, desperate, Alan sees a chance, and he takes it.
Stay here till I get back. Hey, boy. Give me that card.
Now, at this point, Steve, you have to wonder who's the hero and who's the villain of this movie. People have died from hitting their head on the edge of a porcelain sink like that.
Looked pretty brutal.
Yeah. Not to mention that it's just outright thug theft that he just committed.
He's a desperate man.
Of a thing that I would think that ID card is pretty important in this civilization. So that poor guy is now also without that. But yeah, like this whole, like I feel like if this had been a book, you'd be more apt to consider who's right and who's wrong in all of this. But because of the movie, they're kind of portraying this couple as the protagonist and the Ed Asner character as the antagonist. But who's really in the right here, you know? I mean,
the early 70s, this was also the time of the anti-hero in motion pictures.
Yeah, that's true.
And this is really his only one transgression against society.
Well, yeah, but I mean, you could say that about OJ as well.
He punched a guy. That guy's head. That guy has a headache because his head is still attached, Chris.
Yeah. Well, what are you saying?
I'm saying that that's a quantum leap between what Michael Cole did in this scene and OJ did in real life.
Oh,
allegedly.
Well, yeah. All right. Fair enough.
All right.
But they're criminals, and I mean, these laws you have to assume are put into place for a reason. People are probably starving, so you can't. I don't know, man. It's who's really right here and who's wrong. I think it's open to interpretation, but you don't really get that from the film because it has to focus on this story rather than the story of someone who's starving to death. And that would make these people the bad guys. But
well, Alan does serve his purpose in assaulting that man. He and Karen make the train, but authorities are alerted to the ID theft because, well, you just saw what happened.
Well,
He's not going to keep that quiet. He needs his ID card, and somebody assaulted him. He wants justice.
Shouldn't he have dragged that guy into the stall and propped him up like he was taking a dump? Nobody's gonna question that. That would give you at least a day.
So they enter the train and they head for the dining car and sit across from Academy Award winner Van Heflin. in his his final role.
Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The Enforcement Division of the Population Control has asked us to examine all your identification cards. Would you have all the cards ready, please?
Alan, what are we going to do?
Get out of here.
Excuse me. I hope you don't mind this. My name is Quincy George. There's a kind of threadbare cliche about things being darkest just before the dawn. Now, could the two of you manage to look as if you believe that aphorism and smile a little? Alan, is it? And Karen? Forgive me, please. I couldn't help listening in.
Good evening, Mr. George.
Oh, good evening, Vincent. I missed you on my last trip.
Had a touch of the flu. Nothing serious, thank you, sir. They've asked me to check all the identity cards. Not that I have to see yours, of course.
What, some sort of a problem?
It seems that a man was robbed at the station in New York. They think that the man that did it might be on this train.
Well, I hope you catch him. Oh, Vincent, say hello to my nephew and his wife. Alan, Karen. Vincent is the last vestige of a gentle but dying era.
Can we pause it? He used their real names.
Yeah.
Number one rule of being on the run is use an alias. And this is the guy who's going to help them out. I don't know.
Well, I think part of that was to tell us and also to let Karen and Alan know that he had overheard their conversation and he's sympathetic toward their plight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that was already obvious, I thought, but all right.
Okay, well, let's see a little more.
Vincent goes back to the days of the old Chicago Limited, when passenger trains were still a way of life for many of us.
How do you do? I wonder, sir, if I might see your identity card.
I'm afraid you're out of luck there, Vincent. The children just returned from France, and we barely had time to make this connection. Their cards will be issued in Boston.
But really, sir,
Yeah. Well, that explanation satisfies the ticket inspector.
Yeah.
We learned that the man they're sitting with is Quincy George, a former U.S. senator. And he's lost 3 sons of his own, hence his sympathy.
In the Southeast Asia Wars, as he says.
Yes.
All right.
Which we can interpret as Vietnam.
Yeah, or some version of that.
Yeah.
Vietnam spiraled out of control or something. But where are we supposed to know this actor from? He's not familiar to me.
He's been in 1,000 things. I forget the film he won the Oscar for.
Okay.
But he is a he was a household name.
Okay. All right.
For, I guess, a few decades at least. He was in Shane, I believe.
Oh, okay. All right.
So if you've seen that, you may recognize Van Heflin. So we also learn Karen and Alan intend to cross the northern border. And in Canada, the population laws aren't as strict.
Right.
Though we can assume cars are also banned up there. Now, how that makes farms no longer farms, you'll have to ask the surviving members of Rush. That's not really addressed here. Senator Quincy George, he's over 65, and he's receiving clandestine medical assistance from a Dr. Tyler, a rogue physician.
Mm.
He arranges for Dr. Tyler to oversee the birth of this couple's child. In the meantime, Alan and Karen, they're staying at Quincy's Massachusetts estate. Alan is unsure about this arrangement.
Senator, I'm not sure if we should stay.
Of course you'll stay. It's already been arranged. The baby will be born at Doctor's Hospital.
Doctor's Hospital.
The records will have to be slightly altered, but there'll be no reason for you to lose that child.
What can I say?
As little as possible. It may well be that I'm doing you no service at all. Once that baby is born, there's no turning back. Then it's that deadly ritual of track covering. And that can be an ugly, relentless procedure, as you well know.
It doesn't make any difference, as long as the baby survives. Suppose they catch us. What will happen to the baby?
Nothing. Once the birth is recorded in the hospital, no action will be taken against the child. We haven't sunk that low yet.
Alan!
Doctor's Hospital, Chris, we can assume, is staffed entirely by graduates of Community State.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's for the viewers who go way back. One night, an unwelcome visitor shows up at Quincy's door.
Wasn't there a third one? I thought there was a third thing that was like that.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I think there was. We'll have to figure it out.
There have been others.
Yeah.
I don't recall them all.
Yeah.
Let's see those.
Wait, John.
Yes, sir.
It seems that the relentless pursuit has already begun. Mr. Barstow from the Department of Population Control is in the hall. Now the question is, do we brazen it out or do we try to hide you two?
Mr. George, I wouldn't suggest that.
Thank you, John. Please come in, Mr. Barstow.
Check me, Mr. George. I am in.
Yeah.
You know, I'd be pretty upset if I had the role of John here, who's, I guess, the senator's butler.
Yeah, valet, whatever.
Yeah. But it's like he's in a lot of scenes, but he has no lines. So, like, you know, in the next gig he tries to get, it's like, yeah, I had a non-speaking role in this Aaron Spelling production.
And they assume he was an extra.
Right. But no, he's in a lot.
Yes.
Yeah.
He actually plays a pivotal role.
Yeah.
In what we're going to see in just a bit. So Ed Asner attempts to take the couple into custody, but he's without a warrant. And the senator knows that, so he sends him away. But not before the two make promises to one another.
I
Let's
have
see.
a suggestion, Mr. Barstow. Why don't you leave now and forget that you ever found these people? I'm sure that we don't lack for enough crime and violence and mayhem that you couldn't track down more important prey.
If I leave now, Mr. George, keep your doors open because I'll be back with a warrant.
If you can find a judge who will issue one.
I'll find one.
Good. Because for every judge you find, I'll find a higher one who'll enjoin you from entering my property. I hope I have made myself perfectly clear.
Yeah, I don't know, Steve. That kind of sounds like corruption to me. Again, who's in the right here? The cop trying to do his job, or the former senator who's calling in favors so that he can break the law? I don't know.
Well, I think anybody who's trying to save the life of a child that a couple actually wants is doing an honorable thing.
Fair enough.
And Quincy does keep his promise to find judges in high places to bar population control from entering his property. But as a result, Ed Asner is staked out in front of the property and questioning everyone who enters.
Mm-hmm.
And there's kind of a negative effect to this. On the inside, it confines Alan and Karen to the grounds of the estate. If they do try to leave, they'll be arrested. Ed is not the only surprise visitor to turn up at the senator's house unannounced.
Let me be blunt. This morning, the party director phoned Washington. They appeal to you to uphold the laws of the land and not to put yourself in further jeopardy. Senator, the name Quincy George is still respected throughout the country. We all wish it to continue so.
You offer me my own good name. What do you offer your sister?
Karen, listen to me. The government has decided to grant me a hearing if you'll come back with me now.
Will I be able to keep the baby?
I'm sure that we can get a suspended sentence on the criminal charges.
The baby, Howard.
Isn't it enough that I can keep you out of prison?
No, Howard, it's not.
Leave us alone. Go back to New York.
I can't go back. Not without you. Don't you understand that? What do you want me to do? Get on my hands and knees and crawl?
Yeah, Howard can't go back because his own standing with the government is in jeopardy due to his sister's antics.
Yeah. Yeah, they told him you either get this under control or you lose your position in whatever it is.
Right, which terrifies him. And he could potentially be brought up on charges, I guess, if he abets his sister versus bringing her back and having her face consequences.
Mm-hmm.
She refuses to go with him. So Howard, too, remains at the estate. That part I don't quite understand. I believe the senator invites him to stay for dinner, but he seems to stay overnight.
I've had that happen. Yep. Gonna be going to bed soon.
So meanwhile, Dr. Tyler, he's the guy who is he's providing the senator with insulin.
Right.
The senator's diabetic.
Yeah, but he's supposed to be not receiving medical care so that he can die.
Yes, he's past the age of being eligible for any kind of medical care legally. And he arrives at the gate to bring the senator a new supply of insulin, and meet the expectant couple over dinner.
I'm Dr. Tyler. I'm expected.
Is someone sick, Doctor?
No, I'm expected for dinner.
And the bag?
Oh, I always carry it. One never knows. Sudden accident or emergency.
May I see it, Doctor?
Oh, really? It's of no importance.
Please step out of the car, Doctor, with the bag. Insulin? Really, Doctor, were you expecting a sudden outbreak
of diabetes?
Is that what happened?
Yes.
Okay.
What do you mean, is that what happened? You've seen the movie, Chris.
Yeah, but why did it stop? Why did we stop before he finished that sentence?
Well, it was just a matter of the second being a little off. I provided a second, then I provided a time code that was a bit misleading.
See, well, the way it happened, I thought, because you said diabetes.
Pick me apart, Chris.
I thought you were making a joke.
No, I was finishing the line.
Right. I was like, well, that's not, I don't know.
So Dr. Tyler, he's arrested for not being able to provide paperwork indicating that the insulin is for a patient under 65.
Right.
So with him out of the picture, Quincy is afraid the couple are no longer safe in his care because Dr. Tyler was the one who was going to attend to them.
Mm-hmm.
So Quincy...
He was going to deliver the baby.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Quincy concocts a diversion scheme to smuggle Alan and Karen off the property into a car and onto the road to Canadian safety.
Please believe me, if I thought you could remain here safely, I wouldn't ask you to go.
They're waiting for us outside.
John, is everything ready? Yes, sir. John has prepared this back seat to make it appear as if two people are hiding there. John and I will go to the gate and try to leave. When the police officer looks in the back seat, we'll drive away and hope that he follows us. Now, if he does, that'll give you a chance to get away in Mr. Drum's car. John is a man of many talents.
And few words.
So Quincy gives them instructions for when they enter Canada. But again, the wrong person overhears the next plan for the couple.
Yeah.
Prepared this map. Give this letter to my good friend Jean-Paul Decroix. He's Quebec's deputy finance minister. He'll protect you once you're across that border.
I don't think so. I can't permit you to leave.
How do you intend on stopping?
All I have to do is walk out that door and down to the gate, and I swear to you, I'll do it.
It's getting late. We're running out of time.
You're not running out of anything. You're the senator. You'll come out of this in brass and on a pedestal. You don't have to worry about survival. But what about us, Senator? What about that scrambling, dying little breed at your feet? Think about us.
Alan, read that letter, please, aloud.
Are we going to hear the whole letter?
We're not going to. We can summarize it if you like.
No, go ahead.
Well, in the letter to the deputy finance minister of Quebec.
Right.
It's kind of an odd person to choose as your liaison.
Well, you know who you know.
Yeah, but he will apparently help the couple gain asylum. Well, Quincy reveals in this letter his impending death due to Dr. Tyler's arrest and the resulting cutoff of his insulin supply.
Yeah.
So he then explains to Howard, Karen's brother, why the case of Alan and Karen is so important to him.
Wait, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Do you need a doctor every time you do insulin? Can't they just...
Well, it's a prescription. He can't get it any other way but through a doctor. But nobody 65 or over can get a prescription for insulin.
Okay, I got it. Okay.
One child will be born. One young couple will break through this maze of cannibalistic law. And that will scare the hell out of them because they know that another will try. And then another. And when that happens, and it will, Mr. Drum, they'll have to admit the flaw in the fabric and the law will be changed.
Yeah.
Yeah, again, we're led to believe that this is the right course, but we don't know that. Maybe this law is the only way this society can survive. I don't know.
The only thing I see in this movie that suggests that is a comment that the senator makes about his property and how it used to be vaster, wider, but population has taken its toll. And it's,
now he's got neighbors.
Yes.
And he doesn't like it.
That could be just because he's an old guy. That might have nothing to do with overpopulation. So, despite Howard's protest, yes, they do put the diversion plan into action. But Ed Asner, he's not a rube. This isn't his first rodeo.
Right.
This isn't even his first time on our program.
Right.
He's not easily fooled. And when the senator speeds off, he stays behind to await the couple's attempt to flee.
You're under arrest, mister. Now don't make me use this.
Honey? Are you ready?
Stop or I'll fire!
My wife is going to have a baby. You want to shoot us for that? Go ahead. Because if that's what we've come to, I don't think our baby will be missing much. Neither will we.
Stop!
Yeah, Howard pulls a face turn here.
Mm-hmm.
And he ends up fleeing with his sister and his brother-in-law. Ed Asner regains consciousness, and he follows suit. He follows in pursuit, is what I meant by that. He eventually catches up with them.
Yeah, and in Vermont, we're led to believe, even though it looks suspiciously like California. But, have you ever been to Vermont?
I have, yeah, as a boy.
Does it look anything like what we're about to see?
No.
Yeah.
He eventually catches up with them in the Vermont Sierras.
Right.
7 miles, allegedly, from the Canadian border. The chase heats up, and then this occurs. Yeah, there it is again, the 1970s exploding vehicle. Maybe that's why they banned cars. They were clearly too fatal to drive 3 miles at 15 miles an hour.
Now, Jim, can we go to the screenshot that I sent you? Because I just want to point out that this had the cooperation of not just the Chrysler Corporation, but also General Motors.
Right.
And yet they both signed off on having a car explode within a millisecond of impact. If we go back and watch that again, that thing blew up the second it touched anything. Oh, also, I want to go back to that, Jim. Look at the first thing. Gowns.
Yeah, gowns.
Who's wearing a gown in this?
I don't recall any gowns.
Yeah, there's one female character, and she's wearing like what they used to call like a house dress in the whole thing. Gowns. I don't know.
All right. So Ed Asner's dead. And on the radio, we learn that the senator has also passed away. This is the following day of the escape.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's daylight now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And with less than 2 miles to safety, the refugees are faced with a roadblock. Law enforcement, they've set up a checkpoint, which Howard drives around and veers off onto an unknown road, hoping it will lead them to the border. The police follow them in squad cars. Yeah.
It's just a thought I had, but maybe somebody should build a wall that around our borders so that people can't just come and go willy-nilly. I don't know. I guess that's stupid.
So they make it to safety. Howard wishes the couple good luck and returns to the States under the guise of having been kidnapped and forced to be their getaway man. After all, he has a wife in New York. But he also now, he feels as though he can affect positive change in America from within the system.
I see no evidence of that.
It's a redemption arc for him.
Sure, but he's not going to make any difference.
You don't think so?
No.
He promises to.
Yeah.
Well, everybody goes home or finds a new home near a gigantic football field. Chris, anything you'd like to say? Well, they're in Canada.
Oh.
Chris, anything you'd like to say about this before we rate it?
I think I've probably said too much already. I feel like I've bloviated about this movie. So, what else do you have to say?
Well, I think we should see the YouTube comment of the week before we rate the film.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Chris, you want to read that?
2022, this is what the lizard people wanted life to be like by now. Which is an odd comment.
Very odd, but there are people who are of that belief.
Yeah, and one of them is Diana Dews,
yes,
who says, I'm glad I'm not the only one talking about the lizard people. Now, here's the thing, Diane. When you hear the voices in your head, just because somebody else tells you they also hear voices in your head doesn't mean everything's okay. There's some guy, some British guy who started this whole lizard people thing.
Is this David Icke you're talking
about?
Yeah,
David Icke, yeah. Like, I don't, he's nuts or just trying to work a scam, obviously. Are there people who, I feel like this with the flat earth people as well. Do they really believe this stuff? Or is it like a way to be, I'm different, you know?
I don't think it's a way to be, I'm different. I think it's a way to be, I'm smarter than everybody else. I'm smarter than most people who accept this thing that I reject as truth.
Okay.
It's a way of feeling, it's a way of the powerless becoming, in their minds, feeling powerful.
Okay, that makes sense. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, good luck, Diane.
All right. So, do you want to rate it first, or shall I? I think you should rate it first, Chris.
Oh, I hadn't even given it a thought. I liked it. I thought it was thought-provoking. And I like contemplating who is morally correct in this situation. And I don't. You actually made a point where you're like, well, they're trying to protect the life of a child, which is hard to argue against. But at the same time, we need. Laws are set up for a reason, and I don't know. So I enjoyed the movie, and it was well acted. Yeah, I'm gonna give it 4 out of 5 Meritus.
Wow, that's one of the highest ratings you've ever given any motion picture we've discussed.
Well, I'm a big fan of Aaron Spelling, and this was not, as we said. I mean, where were the hot chicks, Aaron? I don't know what, but it was still good. So yeah.
All right. Well, I mentioned the Roe versus Wade angle to this production, but there's another contemporary issue I think this film touches on, if only unintentionally. In 1971, the Vietnam War was at its height. The U.S. government was sending America's sons over to fight, many of whom never returned.
Right.
Some might say they were sacrificed by a nation sending them into an unwinnable situation.
Okay.
To avoid that fate, many young men fled to Canada, which in this film is also a place of refuge for those who want their children's lives taken by the government. I could be overthinking it, but it appears to me that The Last Child possesses 2 tiers of social commentary.
Yeah, that's brilliant, man. That never occurred to me, but yeah.
See, Chris, I'm a little worried about something.
What?
I'm afraid we've been doing this for long enough where I've become a legitimate film critic.
Oh.
And I just want to entertain. 3 Meredith Baxters. Chris, anything you'd like to add?
Well, no worries on this side of the desk. I don't know what the hell I'm doing.
You found the film thought-provoking and made many excellent points regarding its content.
I attempted to make some points. They were very poorly eloquated. Is that the word?
I disagree. I think that we've turned a corner in our role as members of the media. And I'm not sure how comfortable I am with it.
I say lean into it, Steve.
Well, in that case, anything you didn't talk about, we might like to talk about.
No.
Okay, in that case, I think we did it. Thank you so much, Jim. For Chris Morgani, I'm Steve Rees. Askiwiwi.
Askiwawa.
Holy Macano.
Tigers.
Eat 'em raw. We did it, sir.